All right, guys, so here goes. I'm probably gonna get some more haters. Probably gonna get some people who don't want to talk to me anymore, which some of them already don't. But I'm at that point in my life where um, I don't know if it's that I don't care or if that's I've just moved beyond it because I've parented myself and I've had to based on my past and things that I've went through. Sorry, the cat's gonna hop up. Come on, come on. If you want to come on, but you got to sit down. So, I'm working on a book, and I always said that I was going to write my life story, and I wasn't sure how I was going to say it or how much I was going to share, but here goes. So, I'm a military brat. Like I stated before, like I've lived probably 60 plus places in my life, like residences, addresses. And a lot of times I say that's probably why I can't remember a lot. Like, not only trauma that I went through, but like when you get told, like, this is your address now, this is your phone number now, these are your teachers now, this is your school now, this is your city now. Like, I've had to like memorize and dump my whole life. It's like memorize this while you're here. Now dump that information and onto the next and start again and start again and start again. And the people that know me that I've shared along the way, I mean, even my kids, I would always say, like, I feel like I've been on this hamster wheel, just going round and round and round and fully aware that I'm getting physically older, but like just feeling like this kid inside who just wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to be loved for who I am. But along the way, kind of forgetting who I was based on people around me or what I was going through. So, as far back as I can remember, I mean, we don't form memories usually until I think about age 4 or 5. If you think back to like what's the earliest memory you had. Now, a lot of people that have been traumatized remember stuff way before then because like that's how the brain works. Our brain is wired to remember like negative things in order to keep us alive. Um, and there's been research on that. So, um, I mean, there's information out there that you guys can look up. Like, you don't have to go to college to to learn about yourself or to learn about biology, psychology, like any of it. You just have to like have the awareness to know how to weed out the misinformation that's out there. But if you truly know who you are, like you can listen to somebody tell you and say, yeah, that's me, you know. So, uh, as far back as I can remember, I can always remember having a chore. Like our childhood was like very structured, very militant, and I was raised in a Southern Baptist home, so strict religion and strict kind of militant, and I can remember my mom telling my dad like they're not soldiers, but she let him treat us like that. And we kind of mimicked her because she kind of acted like that, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of like how they are towards somebody and somebody else, So, um, I saw my mom be very self sacrificial. And, coming from her background, I can see, like that's how they were raised. A lot of the boomers were raised to like help out, on farms or families or whatever. And they had a lot of kids. There wasn't birth control a lot of times, or the religion, said they couldn't have it, or, women didn't think they had a choice. So, I've seen my mom do that throughout her life, like be the self sacrificial one to others. But so as kids became that way, self sacrificial to others because that's what we saw. And so I can remember having chores for as long as I can remember. It's like I can't ever remember not having a chore as a child. There was always something that we were supposed to be doing. And I always felt like we weren't doing it right because we were always getting into trouble. And my father was gone a lot, and so then my mom would like relax some, and us kids would like pick up the slack and try to, fill in for when my father wasn't there, because it didn't seem like he wanted to help out my mom a whole lot, you know. And I'm sure it's from his childhood. I know some of both of theirs, and that's where I said, like, I can forgive my parents and give them grace, but if they can't forgive themselves, and they can't give themselves grace, then they're just going to deflect or project or, pretend like things were better than what they were. So people would ask me, like, where are you from? I said, not really anywhere. Like, I never really felt like, I guess I didn't know, like, the definition of home. Like, what I thought home was the way I was raised. And, just learning that that wasn't right, that wasn't correct, really made me reflect back a lot on my childhood. And I can see where with my children, that I made them feel sometimes the way that my parents made me feel. And I think a lot of people, a lot of parents think, well, at least, if I didn't do to you what was done to me, then it's not so bad. But that's where generational trauma comes in, and it's passed down. And a lot of it's passed down through the mother. If we think about, like, a lot of the studies they're doing, they say comes from the mitochondrial DNA, and that comes from the mother. And the mother's the first person that teaches us what love is, that teaches us what safety is, that teaches us what our self-worth is. And if that mother doesn't know what hers is, then she's just going to pass it down. So I've been breaking a lot of generational curses and deciding that it stops with me, that I'm going to be better. And I think that's what made me good at my job is I think sometimes with people, like, they try to put me in mom roles or dad roles. And, like, the mom's role is to make somebody feel seen and heard and loved and to make them feel separate from themselves. Like, not to make them feel like they're a duplicate of the mom. I remember telling my kids, like, they would get good grades. I'd be like, yeah, you got that from me. Oh, you're good at math. You got that from me or something. And my children would be like, no, I didn't. It has nothing to do with you. And this is all me. And I can even remember, like, my oldest is the rebel. Like, that girl, I mean, I look back on some of the arguments and fights that we had, and I'm super proud of her because you think I'm tough? My oldest daughter, like, told me off her senior year. Like, she told me off several times before. But I mean, she would just push back, say things that at the time I did not realize. I was in my victim mentality of, like, you think I'm horrible and you think I'm this, and my oldest daughter would be like, it's not about you. God, get over yourself. Like, it's about me. I should be able to decide who's going to be at my dinner. I should be able to decide, like, what I'm going to wear. And I can remember, like, she got teased a lot because she showed more of her masculine self. And I'm sure it's because, I'm more that way. I'm more in touch with my masculine part of my energy. It was my feminine that really I wasn't in touch with a lot because, my mother didn't act very feminine. What we would consider the feminine. My mother didn't, like, do herself up that much. She wasn't in dresses a lot. She wasn't. She was just like you get shit done. That's what you do. Like, you don't wait on a man to come help you. You don't wait on somebody else. You get it done. And I'm sure that's because that's how, she learned. But my oldest, I can remember one of her homecomings. She came out and she was in a suit, and she'd been teased a lot at school. And I can remember telling her, like, no, you're not gonna go looking like that because, you look like you're dressed like a guy and people are gonna tease you, because she had told me that people teased her. And I thought, like, oh, I'm gonna protect her by telling her, no, change yourself. But she screamed and cried, and I mean, she refused to change anything about what she had on or how she did her hair, anything else. And I prevented her from going to that dance, and I shouldn't have. Like, I feel so shitty about that, because it wasn't until recently that I slowed down my life and, like, reflected a lot back. Like, I was that kid. I wore camo pants in high school. Like, we moved to the South when I was in ninth grade, and I couldn't stand, like, the beauty pageants and, like, women using, like, their looks to get stuff. And I rebelled, and my mom dropped me off one time to trim my hair, and I had long, like, permed hair and everything. And I had them cut it, like, above my ears. I had a tail in the back. I wore camo pants. I wore boots. I wore, big hooded sweatshirts. Like, I was one of the guys, and I was super proud of that. And I had, like, guy friends more than girlfriends. Because I always thought, like, you could tell a guy your deepest, darkest secrets, and he's not going to go tell him because it's not about him. And girls, I couldn't stand, like, the gossiping and the I don't, just being jealous of each other and tearing each other apart. And I think, lately there's been a lot more women telling women they're beautiful, just like guys telling guys that they're good looking or they're beautiful. There was this, like, there's like a gender war going on, which, it shouldn't be about gender, because we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. It's just some of us, like, got those parts squashed from parental figures or from peers. But it starts with the mother. And so we had this strict childhood, and I can remember my father used to make us go get the belt. Like, he would be like, you better go get that belt. And he had this belt that had his name on it, this big, thick leather belt. And us kids had to bend over and grab our ankles. And he would whoop us. And I mean, he would stand and, like, snap the belt. And I think that's why I have a startle reflex, honestly. I mean, you scare kids, like, that's going to happen. And so he would lecture and then, tell us that this is what God wanted, and be like, if you put your hands there, they're going to get hit too. So it was like controlled punishment. And I was a back talker. Like, I was one, you'd say, I'm going to give you something to cry about. And I'd be like, you just did. Like, that's why I'm crying, you know? And like I said, I got my mouth washed out with soap. I don't even know how many times when I was younger. Like, I say that's probably why, like, I don't taste a lot of food, or, I had this aversion with food. Like, I had a best friend who I said one time, like, I'm surprised I don't have an eating disorder, because, it was what you dish out. Like, first they're going to dish it out and you have to eat everything on your plate. And I'd be like, I'm full, or I don't want that. And I would sit at the table and, like, rebel, be like, I don't want to have it. I refuse to eat this. Like, and get it wrapped up and put away. And, like, that's what I got the next meal. It was just like, you will do as I say. And I'm the rebel. Like, I'm the back talker of the family. I'm the black sheep. Like, I've listened to videos about black sheep stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. Yep, exactly. Um, and that's the one that doesn't follow all the other ones, That's the one that's different. I mean, I listened to R&B in high school. I listened to heavy metal. Like I said, I chopped all my hair off, and I started, like, we moved to the South, and I went from straight A's to, like, flunking, because they would ask me, like, what's the Alabama state bird? And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm not from here. I'm not going to stay here. I'm just temporarily stationed here. Like, who cares? And I got pulled into the counselor's office. And like I said, back then, it wasn't like counselors weren't asking, like, what's going on with you? What's going on at home? It was just, like, you need to do better at your classes. I was in gifted programs and pushed, to excel for everything. But I can remember, like, being asked, like, well, why'd you get an A minus? Like, what'd you miss on this? And so I had this, like, level of perfection for myself. Like, I was always trying to reach perfection that obviously I was never going to get, because it wouldn't matter how good I did something. I'm like, well, I could have done it better. Well, maybe if I did this differently. And it wasn't until this best friend that I had, we got to an argument very early on, and he told me, like, no, I don't expect you to do everything. Like, you're the one who holds yourself up to that expectation. Because I said, you just want me to be perfect. And he was like, no, you're the one who holds yourself up to that expectation. And from that moment on, it, like, hit me. Like, that's right. I am that person. And I have to stop myself a lot of times, because I could clean the whole entire house and I'd still, like, sit down to rest and be like, well, maybe I could, go reorganize the cabinets. Maybe I could, always feeling like there was some work to be done, some chore to be done. Like, it takes a lot for me to relax. I discovered that, me and my children used to have Friday night movie nights where we'd rent movies and would go to Walmart and get, like, matching t-shirts and stuff, like big oversized t-shirts, and watch each of them, pick out a movie, and would watch movies and stuff. But then once I got back into college as a single mom, like, I would fall asleep during those movies, or I would, like, get up and start doing the dishes. And it was my oldest daughter who's like, Mom, you can't sit still. Mom, just sit down and watch the movie. Mom, just. And people ask me now, and in my previous relationship, like, did you ever see this? And I'm like, well, I watched it, not realizing, like, you've got to pay attention or you're going to miss the plot of the show, or you're going to miss, like, what's going on. But that had been me my whole entire life, because that's the way I was raised. And so for the longest time, I always thought it was like I had this father wound, that, like, my father physically abused me. My father sexually abused me and denied it and gaslighted my mother and called me crazy and said I was making up stuff. And I mean, my mother found out because she snooped in my diary and asked me, but if I was going to make stuff up, don't you think I would say it out loud and not hide it in my diary that I'm trying to hide about my inner feelings? But so I spent, like, all of my adulthood with this, the truth, but you guys don't want to acknowledge it. And that does something to a child's psyche. Like, if you know what happened to you, like, people that are traumatized know what happened to them. Like, the brain remembers stuff, and the things that are so horrific that the brain, tries to put way back there, in the deepest, darkest parts of your mind, the body remembers. I still get a startle reflex. I still, when I get fearful, like, I don't want people touching me. I don't let a lot of people touch me. It's only the people that I really, really trusted that I would let touch me. And I know this comes from my childhood, but I always thought so, like, I had this father wound. But, the fathers don't, it's the mothers that start forming the child. And the fathers come in later on to teach the child things. Once the child knows that they're worthy, knows that they're loved, knows that they're safe, then they can, learn things. That's why, people that had those kind of mothers, they thank their mother. They get up, thanks, mom, and they might say, thanks, coach, thanks, dad. But, a lot of people found that dad figure in coaches or in, other male role models in their life. But as far as mothers, like, there's that connection and that yearning because that's where we start. Um, we start, connected to the mother's umbilical cord through her body, through she carries us. That's why there's nothing like a mother's bond. If you, you know, um, hear these mothers that talk about children that they've lost, like it's a yearning and a longing that never goes away. Just like for the children, for the mothers that they've lost, it's a longing and a yearning that never goes away. My mother would, if us kids would say stuff, which it usually was me, my mother would be like, that has nothing to do with me. That's between you and your father. I have nothing to do with that. Like, my father kicked me out my senior year. I went and spent that time with my best friend. And then I told my mother I wasn't coming back home until he was gone. I got my own apartment. My mother had to co-sign for me because I was 17 when I went to college. I graduated at 17. But it's almost like my mom became this, she wanted me to need her. Not really out of love, but I mean, she needs to feel needed. That's her wound, and that wound got carried on to me. Like, I thought I always needed to be needed, and when people didn't need me, it made me feel like I wasn't worthy or something, so I've gone through my separation and individuation now. I think a lot of us don't until way later on in life because we have to learn to parent ourselves. We have to get over that mother wound. The mother wound cuts deep. It's, wanting to be separate, wanting to be whole, wanting to know that we're different, that we're not replicas, that we're not tools, that it's not our job to fulfill the holes in other people's lives, that those people can't. And so I started with this, only thinking it was my father and not realizing like the deeper one was my mother because my mother allowed it to happen. My mother knew, and permitted my father, would tell him what we did wrong after he would get home, and knew like this is physical abuse. This is not love. Like, don't quote the Bible and say spare the rod, spoil the child, like that's physical abuse. But if you don't know what abuse is, like the emotional abuse is what cuts deeper. We can heal from physical abuse. Those scars eventually, those wounds eventually turn into scars and heal over. The body's very resilient. But the emotional wounds and the emotional scars, those things, stick for life. When you don't feel like the person who created you inside their bodies loves you, doesn't care that you're different, that you're individual. I mimicked my brothers, guy friends. I mean, even some of my father's stuff. Like, my father was a sci-fi person. My father was the one who had the sense of humor for, Monty Python and stuff. And I would roll laughing, and my mom would just be like, that's so stupid. But my mom's a very funny person. If you get her away from my dad, somehow my dad, like, steals her shine. doesn't see her. I spent the majority of my childhood trying to fill in the holes of where, my father didn't make her feel loved or seen. My mother went back to school when I was in high school, I believe. Yeah, high school, in college. And I would come home and wake her up and tell her to eat. Because my mother would give everybody every bit of food that she had and not eat. But, when we're taught as children to sacrifice everything for another person, including ourselves, then we lose ourselves in that other person, and we don't know who we are without an identity. And that happened to me more than once, to where I would put all of my faith, all of my trust, all of my love into another person, only to have them take everything from me and then walk away or ignore me. I've had relationships with people where I've never asked anybody that I've ever dated for a dime. I've prided myself sometimes too much to where I think it intimidated people, where I'd be like, you don't have to do that. I'm doing that. I'm opening up my own door. I'm paying for my own food. I'm doing this because I don't want you to think that I'm, trying to get one over on you. And that was me not having that feminine part of me, who could let somebody love me, because I didn't know how to let somebody love me, because I didn't feel loved for, all my childhood. I felt controlled. I felt neglected. I felt isolated. I felt abused. I felt a lot of things, but like true happiness, like being good enough, like it was yay you for getting all these A's, but like what happened here with this B? Like, you were number 2. Well, who was number 1? Like, I can't remember ever getting an apology for, sorry I let that person abuse you. Sorry I abused you. From my mother. I chased around my mother my adult life. Like, I chased people that I thought would love me unconditionally, because that was my hole. That was my wound that I had, that mother wound. And they didn't. They just used me. They just used me to fill the holes that they had. Because they had issues with their mothers, or their mothers weren't around, and I mean, it doesn't even have to be the actual biological mother. It's whoever was whoever was around the child, before the age of 3, that fulfilled those motherly roles. My oldest, when she was a baby, like, she just clung to me. I could go anywhere. I could put her in that little pouch. I mean, she would sleep through anything. My husband was gone a lot, and I was mowing the yard, and I was, trying to go to, like, wives meetings and stuff, and I'd be like, okay, well, my baby's there, because she would just cling to me. And when I would lay her down, she would cry and cry. And I was told by my mother, like, you need to put her in daycare. You need to let her socialize. Don't keep her all to yourself. Like, you need to this, you need to that. Instead of, like, no, she needed me. Like, she wanted to cling to me. She needed that safety that she had for all those months inside of me. And, I would notice the more that I've individuated myself, the more I've remembered about things and had those memories come back, where, from the time my oldest was Tiny, she was different. She was the one who, I want that different thing. I want Buzz Lightyear. I don't want strawberry shortcake. I want to watch that tune, not that tune. I want to listen to that music, not that music. But she put she was in preschool. She was very academically ahead. And I didn't even realize at the time when people said she's so smart for her age. Yeah, she was compensating, and she was so intellectually smart and emotionally just stunted because she didn't have a mother who was right with her emotions. And as she grew up, I can remember her telling me, like, Mom, your emotions are just all messed up. Like, when you're mad, you're really mad, that means you're really, really hurt. Like, your emotions are all mixed up. Because she was sitting back watching me. She was sitting back calling me out on my BS, calling me out on my issues. And some of the times I did the same thing that my mom did. I said, you think it's all me and I'm horrible? Or, would try to buy her something or, without talking it through, because I wasn't really taught how to talk stuff through. It was really my children that taught me a lot. That it wasn't until years later that I got that my daughter would be like, let me educate you on what's going on in the world, because I'd be like, I don't know that lingo. I don't know. We didn't have all that. Nobody was asking us about any of that, and in that, I stood up for them a lot of times, but a lot of times I didn't. And that shame, I've had moments in the past years where I've sat and it hit me from somebody doing the same thing to me, that either I reflected or deflected to my children, projected to my children, that I thought oh my God, is that how I made my children feel? And then realizing that's how my mother made me feel. God, that hurts. And, I hope my children one day realize that I got it. I heard you. Sometimes it's just too late. Sometimes, I reached out to my mom. My mom would do the silent treatment when I was younger. Just walk around me. Not really see me. Or just see her in me. Because I look like my mother. A lot. I have pictures that people would think that I'm her. When I went back to where I went to high school, people thought they ran into her because I really genetically look like her. But I realized that generational trauma was passed down. And if we don't resolve it, if we don't separate, if we don't love ourselves unconditionally the way that we were intended to, the way that our mothers should have, then we're just going to pass it on. We're just going to keep doing it. If we don't, as parents, see our children for separate, I was completely different than my parents. I could see, I got this from my father. My father, just the pros and cons. He would tell me, make a list, weigh them out. I got musical stuff from my mother. My mother was always humming a tune, and I remember my grandmother was always humming a tune, and I caught myself humming a tune, and my daughters would even tell me, Mommy, you hum, when we go places, because music was in us, and I always wanted to be a singer, and I wrote a lot of songs when I was little. Even when I was 16, I wrote one and recorded it, and I don't have any of the tapes anymore, I wrote it about some guy I was crushing on. And I did the whole thing, going to a studio and recording it and all that. But it was oh, if you want to be a singer, you should be a Christian singer. Like, not that kind of a singer, not a secular one. Like, don't be cursing in your song. It was like you could listen to gospel music. You can even listen to country. But none of that rock and none of that hip hop and none of that rap and none of that heavy metal. It just very much where I was like, but I want to sing all of it. I want to listen to all of it. I want to do all of it. You know, I went through, I think I was stuck in identity crisis for a lot of my whole entire adult life, childhood life, whole adult life, like knowing full well, like I am different. Like I don't need to apologize for being me. I don't need to apologize for, doing my hair the way I want to. I should be in control of my hair, for speaking the way that I want to, for wanting to dream the way that I want to, reading the books that I want to. And I've realized that a lot of that was I had a father wound, somebody who should have taught me a lot and didn't. I've said, like, I always wanted to work on cars. Like, I love cars. I love old cars. But my father didn't teach me how to work on cars, even though he built some, because girls weren't supposed to do that. Like, very much on the girls are this way and guys are that way. And my mother wound of not feeling unconditionally loved, of not ever feeling safe, of not ever feeling like I had a home, because she let somebody hurt me when she knew that's what was happening. She let somebody and approved of it, using God as an excuse. And that's not godlike. That's not Christ-like to me. Doesn't have anything to do with that. So I'm going to keep telling the truth. I'm going to keep individuating. I'm 50 years old and figuring out like what I like, what I don't like. I had a best friend that I loved since I was 12. That I loved since I heard his voice singing. That I said, we have music in common. Like, I listen for you. I hear you in songs. I hear you in music. And he's the one who, I guess, started it with telling me, you're not the things that happened to you. You're not your past mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. If you want to listen to rap or hip hop or rock or whatever, I'll introduce you to a lot of stuff that I know. He's the one who told me, wear what you want. Get what job you want. Make yourself happy. And for that, I'll always love that memory of him. But he's also the one who also made me feel a lot of the ways that my parents made me feel. Because he has his own wounds. And I don't know what the future holds with me, but I know that I'm going to be me. If I'm working at a job and it's not fulfilling me, the job I had, I loved what I was doing. I loved helping the people that I helped, because I know what it's like to be out there and not get any help. Because of how many times I got kicked out of my parents' home. How many times I called and asked for help and got shamed and guilted. How many times I got ignored for long periods of time. But the company I work for didn't seem like they cared. And I can't help the people I want to help with who have nothing with nothing. Can't help them with no funding. Can't help them when it's just me and there's hundreds and hundreds of people. And I can't get them into get help when that little window comes open where they trust for a little tiny bit before it slams shut and they say, well, you didn't want to help me anyway. Because I know what that's like. There's been times in my life where I called so many agencies. I called so many places. Told them, I need help. I'm a single mom. And got told, sorry, you don't qualify, or sorry, we can't help you for 3 months, or, why don't you just fix it and rearrange stuff, all that. And then my children got stuck with that. My children were trying to fill in the holes. My children were trying to regulate my emotions, and, that wasn't fair to them. That wasn't fair to them for me to not be the one helping them discover their emotions and their feelings. I watched the show Arcane in the past couple years, and I can remember my kids watching shows like that and thinking I could be every single character in that. I could relate every single one because I've been in all of those situations, felt like each one of them. But also in that, realizing those girls, that's the way I made my daughters feel. Like their mother was gone. And this father figure, was trying to do the best that they could do. But like, not encouraging them to fight for themselves, to be themselves. You guys should go watch that show. It's excellent. The music, the artwork, the characters, everything about it is amazing. I'm gonna buy the box set whenever I remember. Whenever I remember to. I'll say that now, and then I'll go downstairs and I'll probably forget. But excellent show. But there are other shows out there where you think like I could be that character and that character and that character. Like there's more sci-fi stuff going on where I could say, yeah, I could see me in that character and I could see me in that character. I could see me in the light and I could see me in the dark because I've been to both of those places. But that's because I healed those wounds. I taught myself stuff. Some of it was by following rules, following things that, were told to me by my parents. Some of it was figuring it out on my own, being my own MacGyver, because I didn't have a choice. And because the people that I, thought would help me didn't. And a lot of us, if we don't, if the ones that we thought were supposed to love us and supposed to help us didn't, then we get that feeling of like, why would anybody else? Or, when love comes along, like, I don't know what love is. What's that feeling? But I know that I've felt love before. Love is when you have a couple dollars and you're just scraping it together for a little tiny meal. All you can afford for Christmas. And you just sit and listen to music. You just talk hours and hours about nothingness and everything in the world and the what ifs and the whys and everything else. But I also know what it's like to lose love. I also know what it's like to feel loss. But the more and more that I individuate, the more that I heal myself, the more that I've healed those wounds. And the kid in me has come alive, and apparently I like almost anything. Like I'm like, I mean, my coworkers were like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff on your walls. I'm like, yeah, because I like that, and I like that, and I like that, and I like that, and I like that. And you know why I have everything on my walls? Because the whole time growing up, I couldn't really put that much on my walls. Like, we moved and moved and moved and moved. And so I want to see everything that I like. You know, my playlist is all over the place because I like that music and that music and that music. And, you know, that's what we're supposed to be. All the colors of the rainbow, all of the parts of the universe, you know, all of the zodiac within us. Everything that, you know, we can possibly be. But you can't get that if you still deal with wounds. If you still don't know that you're separate, don't know that you're individual, don't know that you can be who you want to be. You decide. You know what I mean? Nobody writes your story. Your parents don't write your story. You know the truth. You write your own story. You know, and if they don't like it, oh well, what are they going to do? Not talk to you? I mean, mine don't talk to me. So I think this is going to be some of my life passion. Just talking about this with people, because I think a lot of us are grown adults out there with this little kid inside of us that never got to be a child, that always felt like the child who's pretending to be an adult, who feels like they're like 1,000 years old on a hamster wheel that just goes round and round and round, who doesn't know love when it comes along, who only hangs on to losses and only hangs on to pain and only hangs on to negativity and tries to mold themselves and, you know, looks for validation and love in others and doesn't really see ourselves, any good in us. But that's not how we were created. That's just generational trauma. That's passed down generations after generations. Whether it's abuse or neglect, whether it's from the father role or the mother role, you know, whether it's from the people who were supposed to fill those motherly roles of making you feel seen and heard, and that you can do things in the world and that you're separate from them, to make you feel protected and safe. Or the fatherly roles that teach you things, that teach you all of the skills and the communication with the outside world. There's a reason why I was a business major at first. You know, I see patterns. I've always talked in patterns and probabilities, but I changed that to psychology. Like when I went back to school, when I graduated, it was like the 6th university. I had 160 something hours. I changed it from a business major to a psychology major because it just intrigued me. The mind intrigues me. People intrigue me. I see the good in them, but I also see the wounds in them. And I've had to spend a lifetime learning that I can't heal other people's wounds like that. All I can do is share my story, share what I've been through, share, you know, well, this is what I did for me. And you have to figure it out for you because it's different for everybody. But you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else, before you can even know what love is in order to love somebody else. You have to make yourself feel safe, make yourself feel seen, make yourself feel heard before you can do that for anybody else. Or you're just going to spend a lifetime not knowing who you are, not knowing what love is, not feeling safe within the world, not feeling safe within your own skin. But I'm on my journey, and if you guys, there's a professor, Sam Vaknin, that I started listening to a couple years ago. Brilliant mind. He has loads and loads and loads, like thousands of videos about everything you can imagine, especially psychology, especially personality disorders, personality issues. He has them on separation, individuation, that you can listen to for free, that will explain, but you have to know who you are. You have to reach within. I could listen to his videos and go, yep, that's me. Yep, sometimes I'm that, and sometimes I'm hell on wheels, and go listen, go check him out. And then, there's music. I think we need to combine psychology. We need to combine with other things. It's about the mind, body, and spirit. And it's all of our jobs to just individuate, be individuals. We're all individuals. We're all different. There is nobody exactly alike, even twins. There's nobody exactly alike. Nobody knows you like you know you. But you have to know who you are. So I'll be uploading videos. I'll be writing my story. Sharing things while I can. And I'll be helping people who don't feel seen and don't feel heard. Because that's been me the majority of my life. But I see me now, and I hear me now. And that's how I can see and hear others. I've spent a lifetime sitting back, watching. But just not watching myself until the past several years. So until then, take care. I'll talk to you guys later.